equals the cathedral smelled of lilies and old money. I stood in the vestibule, the heavy oak doors closed before me, my reflection ghosting in the stained glass. It was 2 o'clock. The organist was waiting for my signal. But I wasn't looking at the altar. I was looking at the empty front pew reserved for the parents of the bride. I checked my phone one last time. No missed calls, no frantic texts about traffic, just a notification from Instagram. My brother, Tyler, he had posted a photo 3 minutes ago. He was popping a bottle of champagne at a rooftop bar, my parents beaming over his shoulder like he had just invented fire. The caption read, "Priorities, building the empire, exclusive club launch." Tears would have been inefficient. Anger would have been a waste of energy. I simply processed the rejection like a failed experiment. Note the result, archive the data, and move on. I turned my phone off, smoothed the silk of my dress, and signaled the organist. I walked down that aisle alone. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I grew up in the golden shadow of my brother, Tyler. In the economy of our family, Tyler was the volatile asset my parents couldn't stop investing in, and I was the savings bond they forgot they owned. It wasn't a tragedy, it was a business model I was on the wrong side of. Tyler was always the visionary. When he was 22, he needed $50,000 for a real estate app that didn't exist. My father, Thomas, wrote the check before dinner was served. He called it seed capital. When the app failed 6 months later, my mother, Patricia, called it a learning experience. They praised his boldness. They admired his ability to dream. Meanwhile, I was in the library. I was winning state science fairs and securing scholarships that saved them tuition money they never thanked me for saving. When I was accepted into the doctoral program for biotechnology, my mother frowned and asked if I was sure I wanted to spend my 20s in a lab coat. She called my patents cute hobbies. She told her friends I was finding myself, while she told them Tyler was building an empire. The empire, of course, was a series of failed crypto ventures and a nightclub in the seaport that was shut down for health code violations. The neglect wasn't passive, it was active. It was a choice made over and over again. They missed my high school valedictorian speech because Tyler had a panic attack about a breakup. They missed my college graduation because Tyler needed help moving into a penthouse they paid for. And then, the wedding. The empty pew wasn't a mistake, it was a statement. It was the final data point in a 29-year trend line. They didn't come because they didn't think I would mind. They thought I was durable. They thought I was the safe bet that didn't require maintenance, but they were wrong. I wasn't just studying science, I was studying them. I learned that you cannot demand value from people who are committed to devaluing you. I stopped sending the updates. I stopped begging for the crumbs of their attention. I found Trevor, an architect who looked at me and saw a structure worth reinforcing, not demolishing. He was the one who held my hand when the acquisition offers started rolling in. He was the one who toasted me with cheap champagne in our first apartment when I cracked the code on the synthetic protein sequence. He saw the asset. My parents only saw the shadow. And shadows, by definition, disappear when you shine a light on them. I decided it was time to turn on the lights. 5 years is a long time in the biotech world. It's the difference between a hypothesis and a cure. In those 5 years of silence, I didn't just survive, I evolved. I built a company that solved a problem the industry had been throwing money at for a decade. When the licensing deal for my synthetic protein patent closed, the wire transfer notification was simple: $25,200,000. It was quiet. It was just numbers on a screen. But it felt louder than every party my brother had ever thrown. I celebrated with Trevor and my core team in our small office. We drank good scotch out of paper cups. We toasted to the work, not the image. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I checked my family's social media. It was a masterclass in smoke and mirrors. Tyler was posting about his next big venture while I knew through the grapevine that his creditors were circling. My parents were posting photos from charity galas they could no longer afford to attend. They were projecting an empire that was crumbling, brick by mortgaged brick. I saw the desperation in their captions, the frantic need to prove they were still relevant. And I saw an opportunity. I knew my family. I knew their language wasn't love. It was liquidity. They respected things they could envy, so I decided to speak their language. I didn't buy the matte black G-Wagon because I needed a car. I bought it because I needed a weapon. I paid $162,000 in cash. It was excessive. It was aggressive. It was a tank wrapped in luxury. I parked it in front of my brownstone, took a single photo, and posted it to Instagram. The caption was short, armored up, new era. I didn't tag them. I didn't need to. I knew that in the economy of my family, silence was a vacuum, and money was the only thing loud enough to fill it. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for the hunger to bring them to the door. The trap snapped shut faster than I expected. 3 hours after I posted the photo, my phone rang. It was my mother, Patricia. I stared at the screen, watching the name flash. 5 years of silence, broken not by an apology, but by the sight of a luxury SUV. I answered on the 4th ring. I didn't say hello. I just listened. There was no greeting. No. How have you been? Her voice was crisp, authoritative, as if she were summoning a servant. We need to talk, she said. Family meeting. Tomorrow at 2. I asked what it was about. She ignored the question. Just be there, Olivia. It's important. She hung up before I could agree or refuse. I sat in my office, the silence ringing in my ears. The audacity was breathtaking, but underneath the anger, I felt a cold resolve. I knew exactly why they were calling. They had seen the armor, and they wanted to know if they could pierce it. The next afternoon, I drove to the family estate in Beacon Hill. The G-Wagon purred over the cobblestones, a dark beast in a world of polite, fading aristocracy. I parked right in front of the wrought iron gates. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, looking up at the house that had been my prison for 18 years. I closed my eyes and let the internal monologue run. I am not here to reconnect. I am not here because I miss them. I am here to perform a ritual. I am here to break the final link of the chain. 4 years. A small, stupid part of me hoped that if I just became successful enough, they would finally see me. Today, I am killing that hope. I am walking in there not as a daughter seeking approval, but as an executioner of the past. I opened my eyes. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was calm. My eyes were clear. I stepped out of the car, the heavy door thudding shut behind me like a gavel. I walked up the steps, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I felt sovereign. The family meeting was a masterclass in controlled chaos. The dining room table was buried under stacks of urgent mail, foreclosure notices, IRS letters, and subpoenas. The air was thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation. Tyler was sitting at the head of the table, his tie loosened, his face pale and unshaven. He looked less like an emperor and more like a man waiting for the executioner. My parents were huddled together, their faces gray. They looked older, smaller. The grandeur of the house felt hollow now, like a theater set after the show has closed. We have a situation, my father said, his voice trembling. He didn't look at me. He looked at the paperwork. Tyler's latest venture ran into some regulatory issues. The assets are frozen. It's a misunderstanding, Tyler snapped, his voice high and thin. It's a witch hunt. The SEC doesn't understand the blockchain model. The bank has initiated foreclosure on the estate, my mother whispered, her hand clutching a handkerchief. The auction is scheduled for Friday. We're going to lose everything. They laid it all out. The fraud charges, the hidden debts, The 5 years of living on credit to maintain the illusion of success. They had leveraged everything, the house, their retirement, their reputation on Tyler's genius. And now the bill had come due. They didn't apologize. They didn't ask how I was doing. They just pivoted to the demand. "We need a bridge loan," my father said, finally looking at me. "Just until Tyler gets this sorted out. We know you have the liquidity. We've drawn up the papers. It's a family loan. We'll pay you back with interest once the freeze is lifted." "It's your duty, Olivia," my mother added, her voice gaining a sudden, sharp strength. "We are your family. You can't let strangers take this house. It's our legacy." I observed them. I cataloged the panic sweating through my brother's expensive shirt. I analyzed my parents, who were watching me with the expectant gaze of landlords waiting for rent. They genuinely believed that my success was their safety net. They thought 5 years of silence could be erased with a signature. "I'm not signing the loan," I said. My voice was calm. It was the only steady thing in the room. The request was so absurd, I almost admired its purity. They weren't asking for help. They were demanding a bailout. They were trying to leverage the family name I had spent 18 years trying to escape. I leaned back in my chair, the silence stretching until Tyler started to fidget. I thought about the concept of value. To them, value was something you displayed. It was an address in Beacon Hill. It was a membership at a club. To me, value was something you built. It was intrinsic. It was the pattern they dismissed. It was the mind they ignored. They were crumbling because their entire identity was rented, and the lease was up. I stood up slowly. The chair scraped against the hardwood floor, loud in the quiet room. "I'm not signing the loan," I said. My voice was calm. It was the only steady thing in the room. "What?" Tyler's head snapped up. "You have to. You have the money. We know you have the money." "I do," I said, "but I'm not giving it to you." "Olivia, please," my mother begged, her composure finally cracking. "We'll lose the house. We'll have nowhere to go. This is your home." "No," I said. "It was never my home. It was just the place where I lived while you were busy admiring Tyler." I picked up my briefcase and set it on the table. The same table where I had eaten thousands of silent dinners. I unlatched the locks. The sound was sharp, final. "I know the house is up for auction on Friday," I said. "I know the minimum bid. And I know you have no equity left." I pulled out a thick document bound in blue paper. I slid it across the table. My father picked it up, his hands shaking. He read the first page. His face went white. "What is this?" he whispered. "It's the deed," I said. "I bought the house this morning through a shell company. I paid off the bank. The foreclosure is canceled." You bought it?" Tyler stared at me, hope warring with confusion. "So we can stay? You saved us?" "No," I said. "I bought it. It's mine, and I have other plans for it." "What plans?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. "The Future Innovators Trust," I said. "My foundation. We need a headquarters. The ballroom will make an excellent lecture hall. The bedrooms will be dorms for scholarship students, students who actually have potential." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a world ending. "You're evicting us?" my father asked, his voice hollow. "I'm giving you 30 days, I said, "which is more notice than you gave me when you decided I wasn't worth your time." I closed my briefcase. You wanted to leverage the family legacy? Now it's being put to good use. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Tyler was indicted on federal fraud charges 2 weeks later. He pleaded guilty to avoid a trial that would have exposed every detail of the family's financial ruin. He is currently serving a 4-year sentence in a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania. My parents were given 30 days to vacate the estate. They moved into a 2-bedroom condo in a suburb 40 minutes outside the city. Their social circle evaporated the moment the foreclosure notice became public record. They tried to reach out to me once through a lawyer, asking for a settlement to help them in their old age. My lawyer sent back a copy of the deed and a cease and desist order. I haven't heard from them since. 1 year later, I stood in the ballroom of the estate. The chandeliers were gone, replaced by modern, high-efficiency lighting. The silk wallpaper had been stripped away to reveal clean, white walls. It wasn't a ballroom anymore. It was a lecture hall. Rows of desks were filled with students, young men and women from underfunded districts who had brilliant minds but no access to capital. I looked out at them, and I saw myself. I saw the hunger. I saw the intelligence that had been dismissed because it didn't come with the right last name or the right connections. In the front row sat Mia, a 19-year-old biochemistry student who had developed a filtration system for microplastics. She looked terrified and determined, exactly how I had felt at her age. I walked down the aisle, not as a bride, but as a mentor. I stopped at her desk. "Your proposal was excellent," I told her. "We're going to fund the prototype." Mia looked up at me, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Nobody else would even look at it." I looked, I said, "And I see you." I walked out of the house, the sound of animated discussion filling the air behind me. The house was finally alive. It wasn't a museum to a dead legacy anymore. It was a factory for the future. I climbed into my G-Wagon. As I drove down the long driveway, I passed the gate where I had paused a year ago. The brakes remained untouched. The rearview mirror stayed unchecked. I didn't look back at the house that had once been my prison. I looked forward, to the lab, to Trevor waiting with dinner, to the life I had built with my own hands. I had built a family of choice, not blood, and that foundation was unbreakable. If you believe family is defined by loyalty and not just blood, share this story and tell me in the comments, what's the one boundary you're proud of setting this year?